Gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss our weekly deep dives into the truths society doesn't want you to hear. Tonight, we're confronting the most profound mystery that has haunted men across centuries, professions, and entire civilizations. Not war, not death, not even suffering, but something far more perplexing and maddening, the feminine mind. If there's one enduring puzzle that has broken the greatest intellects, one enigma that has driven philosophers, poets, and scientists to desperation, it is this deceptively simple question: what does a woman want? This wasn't asked by some frustrated pickup artist in a bar. It wasn't written in a bitter Reddit thread after a bad date. This profound question was posed by none other than Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis himself. After decades of rigorous study of the human psyche, after mapping the intricate contours of repression, ego, and the unconscious, Freud was left with a single, unsolved problem that haunted him until his dying day, truly understanding the mind of a woman. He famously confessed, the sexual life of adult women is a dark continent for psychology. And gentlemen, in 2025, as you navigate dating apps full of contradictory profiles, as you decipher cryptic texts that say one thing but mean another, as you watch women sabotage relationships they claim to want, Freud's century-old admission resonates more powerfully than ever. This phrase wasn't intended as some misogynistic insult. It was a confession, a surrender from one of history's most brilliant minds. Freud was not a man who shied away from uncomfortable truths. This was the man who told Victorian society that children have sexual impulses, that we all harbor incestuous desires, that civilization itself depends on the repression of our darkest urges. And yet, when it came to women, even he had to admit defeat. He realized that no matter how deeply he tried to analyze his female patients, no matter how many dreams he interpreted, neuroses he untangled, or traumas he unearthed, the inner structure of the feminine mind remained elusive, clouded in contradictions, evasions, and a fluidity that defied his scientific models. Let's transport ourselves back. It's the late 19th century in elegant Vienna. Freud is not yet a global name. His office is filled day after day with women, upper-class women, educated women, cultured women, who are suffering from inexplicable ailments. One cannot speak above a whisper. Another loses the use of her legs without any medical cause. Another faints without reason, her body convulsing as if possessed. A fourth is consumed by unexplainable anxieties that leave her paralyzed. The doctors of the time dismissively labeled these women hysterics. The word itself reveals the medical bias. It comes from the Greek hysteria, meaning womb. For centuries before Freud, the medical establishment seriously believed that a woman's uterus could physically wander through her body, pressing against other organs, causing madness and dysfunction. No joke, that was the scientific explanation from men with medical degrees. But Freud looked deeper than his contemporaries dared. He saw that these women weren't possessed by wandering organs. They weren't simply faking for attention. What he discovered was far more disturbing and revolutionary. Their symptoms weren't physical at all. They were psychological manifestations of deep inner conflicts. He found that their afflictions were often symbolic expressions, metaphors in motion. A woman who could not speak often had something she was forbidden to say in proper society. A woman who could not walk may have unconsciously feared the direction her life was taking. A woman whose body convulsed might be expressing physical desires that were socially prohibited. Freud came to a groundbreaking conclusion that changed psychology forever. The human mind is a battlefield between primal desire and social repression, between the unconscious animal within and the civilized mask we wear. And nowhere was that battlefield more volatile and explosive than in women of his era. Because unlike men, who were at least somewhat encouraged, however crudely, to pursue their natural desires, women were expected to be domestic angels, chaste, pure, emotionally selfless, spiritually elevated, above base instincts. In short, completely unnatural beings. But nature cannot be buried without consequences. And so the instincts, the libido, the animal beneath the corset and petticoats, found another way to speak. Through paralysis, through tears, through mysterious illness, through what Freud called conversion symptoms. And here's the part that directly affects you, the modern man watching this video. The hysteria Freud studied hasn't disappeared from our world. It has simply changed form to adapt to our times. Today's women don't faint dramatically in Victorian drawing rooms. Instead, they dissociate in club bathrooms between selfies. They don't develop mysterious paralysis. They lose themselves in endless TikTok spirals and influencer delusions, paralyzed not physically, but psychologically. Today's hysteria is digital, aesthetic, performative, algorithmic, but the core psychological conflict remains exactly the same: primal female desire at war with socially constructed female identity, a culture that loudly tells women they are empowered, liberated, and independent, while their biology still whispers ancient, unchangeable truths in their ears. The body knows what is real, the unconscious knows, but society, media, and education scream over these whispers with deafening ideology. You see this play out in your dating lives every day. The woman who says she wants a nice guy, but chases the emotionally unavailable player. The date who tells you she's not into games, but plays them constantly. The girlfriend who claims to value honesty, but punishes you whenever you're truly honest. These aren't character flaws, they're psychological defense mechanisms. They're modern hysteria. This brings us to Freud's most uncomfortable legacy, his insights into the nature of female desire. In Freud's framework, all human behavior is ultimately driven by unconscious drives, chief among them, sexual energy, libido, not always intercourse itself, but the raw primal force of wanting that begins in infancy. From the moment we're born, we begin a lifelong journey of channeling and sublimating these instincts into socially acceptable forms: art, work, relationships, even religious devotion. But women, in Freud's controversial view, had a fundamentally different psychological development than men. Where boys resolved the Oedipus complex by identifying with their fathers and shifting their sexual energy outward into achievement, girls, Freud theorized, go through a more convoluted and traumatic process. Initially attached to the mother, they turn toward the father upon discovering they lack what he possesses: the phallus. Not merely the physical organ, but what it represents symbolically: status, power, agency in the world. Freud called this penis envy, a term that sounds crude today, but referred more broadly to the perceived lack of symbolic power in patriarchal society. And before you dismiss this, ask yourself honestly, in how many ways does our modern culture still revolve around the pursuit of traditional male power? This developmental part leaves the female psyche in a difficult position, unable to fully identify with the mother's perceived weakness, and unable to claim the father's overt power. So what happens psychologically? A fractured sense of self emerges, a desire that masks itself in contradictory behaviors, a longing for power that expresses itself through indirect means: beauty, validation, emotional manipulation, and relational leverage. Now let's bring this psychological framework into your world, your dating experiences, your frustrations of 2025. You, the modern man watching this channel, are dealing with a different manifestation of hysteria, one that wears carefully applied makeup, posts calculated thirst traps, and measures her value, not by inner virtue or character, but by external validation and social media metrics. You've experienced it firsthand. The match who love bombs you with attention, telling you you're amazing, then vanishes without explanation when you reciprocate. The woman who begs for emotional intimacy, then immediately devalues you for providing it. The date who claims to want stability, but becomes instantly bored when you offer it. The modern woman isn't without desire, she's actually consumed by it. But it's a desire fractured by contradictory social messaging, confused by ideological programming, and inflated by digital illusion. She's told simultaneously to be sexually liberated, but not easy, career-focused, but family-oriented, independent, but partnered, authentic, but always improving herself, strong but vulnerable, but not too vulnerable. Is it any wonder her desires seem chaotic? You try to approach relationships with honesty. You try to provide stability. You offer logic, clarity, consistency, the very foundations of a healthy connection. And what happens? You're labeled boring, predictable, lacking that magical spark. What she's really saying, through the lens of Freudian analysis, is that your presence doesn't stimulate her inner chaos, doesn't mirror the turbulence within her psyche that feels familiar and therefore comfortable. Freud might say you're approaching the entire problem incorrectly. You're treating her as a purely rational being with conscious, linear desires, as if what she wants follows logical patterns that can be understood and satisfied. It does not. Female desire, as Freud observed through thousands of clinical hours, is cyclical, symbolic, often largely unconscious, even to the woman herself. This isn't an insult or dismissal, it's psychoanalytic observation based on extensive clinical data. Here's the hard truth.
You cannot give her what she wants because at a fundamental level, she does not know what she wants. And when she occasionally does find it, she may unconsciously sabotage or destroy it, simply because psychological stability feels alien and threatening to a psyche constructed on contradiction and inner conflict. This is the heart of Freud's dilemma that has relevant implications for your dating life today. He spent years patiently listening to women, studying their dreams, unpacking their psychological defenses, and what he found was not clarity, but an abyss of complexity, a mind of mirrors and masks. A mind that instinctively bends truth to accommodate feeling. A mind that confuses love with attention, attention with power, power with safety, in an endless cycle. And so we return to his famous question that has haunted men for generations. What does a woman want? The answer, if there is one, lies not in logic or dating strategies or pick-up techniques, but in understanding that feminine desire itself is not a problem to be solved. It is a force to be witnessed. You, as a man in the modern dating market, must stop playing detective with a woman's psyche. You must stop frantically trying to decode her contradictory signals, fix her inner conflicts, or logically explain her self-sabotaging choices. You will lose your own sanity in that psychological maze. What you can do, what you must do, is master your own mind and life. Your energy, your vision, your discipline, your purpose beyond women. These are the tools Freud would advise you to sharpen in 2025, because when you are grounded in yourself, when your ego is strong but flexible, when you are not easily pulled into her emotional whirlpools, you become something increasingly rare in this chaotic dating market, a fixed point of certainty in a world of psychological flux. Freud didn't write his theories for Reddit or Manosphere forums. He didn't create content for YouTube or TikTok. He sat with actual women, week after week, year after year, and tried to listen to the parts of themselves they couldn't consciously hear or acknowledge. And in the silence between their words, in the patterns of their symptoms, he found what all psychologically mature men eventually discover, that to chase feminine approval as your primary purpose is to chase a shadow that continually shifts shape. That real peace comes not from decoding her mysteries, but from knowing yourself so deeply that her mysteries no longer threaten your center. So the next time you are rejected without explanation, emotionally manipulated, or left confused by female behavior that seems to make no sense, remember Freud and his intellectual honesty. Remember that even the greatest mind in psychological history, a man who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, could not find a final definitive answer to feminine desire. But he found something more valuable. Truthful observation, without ideological filters. And truth, gentlemen, is not always comfortable in the moment. It doesn't always help you get the girl, but it is always yours to claim as you build a life of meaning beyond the validation of women who themselves don't know what they want. If you found value in this exploration, smash that like button, and share this video with other men who need to hear these uncomfortable truths. Drop your experiences in the comments below. Let's build a community of men who choose psychological clarity over comforting delusions. Until next time, stay grounded in your purpose.